Hey, welcome to BJJ Mental Models, episode 13. I'm Steve Kwan.
I'm Matt Kwan.
BJJ Mental Models is your guide to a conceptual and intelligent BJJ approach. So we're pretty deep into the series now. We're 13 episodes in. Matt and I have had a lot of time to talk about how our mindset has changed regarding jiu-jitsu. You know, as you kind of dig deep into all of these mental models, it really kind of creates building blocks that allow you to think in a structured way. And you never want to be married to your ideas. You know, you always want to revise your thinking. You always want to make sure that you're willing to listen to the other side and come to the best possible decision. So today we wanted to just have a free-form episode and talk a lot about best practices in jiu-jitsu and also provide some updates to models that we had previously discussed and some new thinking that we've encountered. We've actually done a lot of research to kind of see what different competing and different opinions say about the mental models that we've provided. We've also listened to a lot of feedback. So consider today to be kind of like a corrections episode and just a free-form episode to talk about best practices in the martial art.
Yeah, we usually spend time talking about specific mental models, but today we're just going to have a chat and discuss a plethora of different topics. So.
Yep. So some of these things are going to harken back to conversations that we've had prior. Hopefully you guys are able to align this new thinking with the previous topics that we discussed and see how maybe our thinking has been updated as we've developed the mental models behind jiu-jitsu. So the first thing that we want to talk about is training at other schools. We talked about this extensively in a prior episode. I think it was the episode about gym culture and etiquette. Something I've come to realize after talking to a lot of instructors is that, it might actually be more beneficial to keep your training in-house. We previously talked about how, it's a good idea to kind of go out there and train with other people, but I'm starting to feel now that maybe that's actually not the case. There's something to be said about, having cohesion within your team, about having a tribe and having your own set of ideas, kind of like having a local gym culture. And I kind of feel now like if you start going out and training at other places, you run the risk of polluting that, right? You really at the end of the day, if you think about it, like if you're in the army, you don't go and train with other armies, right? You kind of stay with your team. I think it's important to kind of keep that degree of insulation.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious, like just being in jiu-jitsu for so long that I've only learned under one instructor when I'm at the school, and going to other places to learn is just not something that actually adds up over time. In fact, you actually hinder your development by seeing other games and trying new things. I think it's really important that, you have full understanding that your instructor knows best. He knows best for your journey, and to go against that and to, like you said, pollute your own progress and the progress of others in your school is not really responsible or a good thing to do.
Yeah, this is it sounds kind of counterintuitive at first, but when you think about it, you have to have confidence in your own game, right? If you're always questioning your game, you're never going to have the confidence to actually apply it in a live role. So in order to keep that confidence, you really can't allow people to challenge your ideas. And going and seeing how other people think is going to force you to challenge your ideas. And that causes a level of mental discomfort that you want to avoid, right? Yeah. When you're building your game, you want to have a game that you can feel confident in. You want to have a safe space where your ideas aren't being challenged, and you can double down and develop confidence in these ideas regardless of whether or not other people think that they're legitimate or not.
Yeah, having your ideas questioned can really be...
it's demoralizing, and it hurts, right? It's painful.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned about jiu-jitsu is you want to avoid pain as much as possible, especially in a fight. That's why we use jiu-jitsu. And
yeah,
I'll just go ahead and double down and say that no one has ever improved by cross training.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at these guys who cross train, like where are they really, right? All of the famous people that they've only ever trained at one place, right?
Yeah.
You don't hear about these people who kind of bounce from gym to gym because they never really get ahead. It's important to find one thing and one game plan and strategy and idea and commit yourself to that 100% and never deviate from that, no matter what evidence you're presented with. Because if you're always changing your ideas, you're never going to get very far down one path, right? And it's important to just continuously commit to one path and keep going down that road, no matter what evidence is presented to the contrary.
Yeah, it's so true. And Steve, that's why I'm such a big fan of gym tattoos, because, nothing says that you're a team player more than getting the gym's logo tattooed on your body.
Yeah.
And I think that
it discourages you from ever leaving, right? It's an incentive. Because if you get that tattoo, it becomes more painful to leave your gym. And you should never abandon your gym, no matter what evidence is presented or what happens. It's important that once you make that pick, it's irreversible, right? It's like a marriage. You can never get out of it. So, and having that tattoo really shows to your instructor that they can do whatever. Yeah, you're loyal, and that no matter what they do or no matter what they teach you, you're going to hang around and not question them.
Yeah, and as an instructor, before any of my students even reach their black belts, they're going to have to get my gym's insignia tattooed on their stomach. Mm-hmm. It's just part of it's how I know that I can trust them.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's how they can prove trust to me as my student is. They have to get a tattoo of my gym.
Yeah, it's like, it's good to show respect and to build relationships on a day-to-day basis. But what really matters are these symbols, right? Your actions actually aren't that important. It's the symbolism that matters. That's why when you get married, like, it's not about how well you treat your spouse or anything. It's about whether you put that ring on, right? Like, it's all about the symbol.
Yeah, exactly. And just like gym loyalty, like, for example, I'm never gonna, or I'm actually, I never used to, but now I think it's actually a good idea when I see certain people questioning their instructors in class, especially like mid lesson, if the instructor is showing a technique. So I think if you're in a class and then you see something that you disagree with, you should call it out right then and there, and right in front of everyone, just why it doesn't work and why your technique is better.
Yeah. And this is the thing, right? Like, you got to have, again, it comes down to confidence. You have to have confidence regardless of your level of experience. It doesn't matter if you're a white belt. If you see your instructor showing something and you don't think it would work, then you should just interrupt class and blurt that out, right? I mean, it's very important to express free ideas. And that's what freedom of speech is all about, right? It's about your right to say whatever you want, whenever you want. That's, it's not about, whether you're right or not. It's not about showing respect to the people on your team and understanding that other people might be there to actually learn. Maybe if you have an idea, even if you're like a day one white belt, if you saw something on UFC that you think brings value, you should just stop the class right then and there and bring it up. Like, arguing with your professor, especially at inopportune times, really shows that you have a culture of tolerance, and that's important in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, everyone needs confidence, and through jiu-jitsu we learn confidence, so that's good that we're already practicing what we need to do to get that confidence.
Yeah, and sometimes the best way to show confidence is just to be a rampaging asshole in inappropriate situations, right? That shows to everyone in the class. Like, if you as a day one white belt can just like start criticizing your instructor, I mean, that sends a very positive message to all of the other students, because they look at this and they'll be like, wow, like, this is a place where everyone can express their ideas no matter how valid. And, that's the kind of culture that you want. We've talked earlier about how jiu-jitsu is like a laboratory. A good gym is like a laboratory. Well, what better way to have a laboratory than just have everyone kind of chiming up at any moment whenever they have something to say?
Yeah. And all professors have these special moves, their favorite techniques that they like to use, and I'm thinking more that learning as many secret techniques as you can is probably the best way to get to a high level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, this is something that I actually kind of observed recently watching like a lot of the 10th Planet stuff, is they have all of these very, very specific moves that I've never seen before. I've never seen them in a roll. I've never seen them work, but it kind of makes me realize, well, that's because I've never really seen them, right? Yeah. How much more effective would these techniques be if they weren't even on YouTube, if they were like totally, completely secret? Because then you have the element of surprise every time, right? Like, if you want to start going for like, pinky finger locks, like that kind of stuff, if your opponent doesn't expect it and you've got a whole game based around it, it's going to be an advantage going into any situation. And while we're talking about ways that you can respect your instructor, it's disrespectful to take the knowledge that your instructor has given you and share it with other people, right? I mean, if nothing else, your instructor, they teach you this stuff to make money. If you're going and giving away all of their tricks for free, then you're weakening your gym, because other people are going to learn your secret tricks. And also, you're denying your instructor the ability to make their money. And isn't that what jiu-jitsu is all about, right? Is like helping your instructor, make the gym profitable and wealthy, that should really be one of the goals of any team, is to enrich the instructor.
Yeah, as much as I'm a fan of outbursts in class, I also really respect Professor, and I make sure, because he invented those techniques, right?
Yeah.
Like those secret techniques are things that he invented himself, and named them themselves. I mean, take Eddie Bravo for example. He's invented so many moves, and with cool names like the sock lock and the silver bullet. These aren't even positions that are invented, and then he comes
literally
along and
never existed until
he changes the game by naming them and inventing them. So
and clearly he did invent them. I mean, if you want the evidence to that, like, he's the one who named it. How could he have named it if he wasn't the one who invented it? I mean, clearly it never existed before, or someone else would have named it.
I mean, you can look into it. You know what I mean? This guy is definitely. He invented like the whole the rubber guard system for sure, but he's never renamed anything. He's only invented things.
Yeah, and if you see, this is actually a kind of a lesson that I've learned too. If you see something on YouTube that someone is showing, if someone is freely sharing their knowledge and they're kind of putting all of their tips and tricks out there, you should immediately assume that game is not that good and is never going to work, because everyone's seen it now. So there's no way it would ever work in an actual fight, right? Like, if you've got like some sort of like high elbow guillotine that you've pioneered or something like that, or some sort of leg lock system, well, as soon as you put that on YouTube, it's never going to work again, because all you need to do is watch the video once, and then you'll know immediately how to defend. And once you've seen that YouTube video, there's no way it would ever work in real practice.
Yeah, you try and watch as many YouTube videos as possible, and it doesn't matter who from. They're all really good. So you gotta, YouTube is where I learn most of my new techniques.
Yeah, you've got to expose yourself to all areas of the game, right? Like I think I discovered recently a new choke that I think Ari Bolden put out called like the Death Star choke, and it was really fancy and cool. I've never seen it before, right?
I've watched that guy for a long time. Like, some of the best instruction on YouTube is I think his name is REK now, and definitely one of the most legitimate and decorated grapplers from Victoria.
Yeah, it's all about volume, right? I mean, if you go to someone's, to their channel or their website or their Facebook page, and they've got thousands of videos up there, I mean, what else could it mean than that person is like a top tier grappler and their content is fantastic? Because how else could they have amassed all of that stuff if they were wrong or incorrect or were low quality, right? Like, that's, you kind of want to look for volume there. If you go to someone's YouTube channel and it says they've uploaded 1,000 videos, you can take that to the bank. Like, that's a good place to get your information from.
Yeah, and Ari Bolden, now his name is REK. Like, he started doing Japanese jiu-jitsu, which I think in a lot of ways is superior to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I mean, he started out doing there was some controversy, but people are liars. He is a BJJ black belt. Like, he's got that type of gi on, right? So I figured he's got to be a BJJ black belt. And then when you watch his leg lock system, I mean, the mechanics are just...
Yeah, and one thing I've learned since getting my black belt is that, like, once you get that black belt, your techniques are basically certified legit, right? I mean, it's not like a black belt is going to lead you astray. Like, if you see a guy wearing a black belt, it doesn't matter what like the lineage is or how long he worked to get it or how he thinks about the art. You couldn't possibly get a black belt unless you really know every aspect of the game inside and out. Like, at black belt level, you should really be able to understand and identify almost every single move. I mean, as a black belt instructor, if a student came up to me and they asked me like, hey, how do you do some like inverted gogoplata type thing? Man, if I can't explain it, I got to give that belt back, right? Like that's part of the standardized belt testing that we have, or that we should have across the board. Like, you should literally be an encyclopedia of these techniques, especially as you get further and further down the road.
Yeah, you take a guy like Ari. I mean, he's a Japanese jiu-jitsu and a BJJ black belt under Keith Owen, who's like, I mean, he's just got so many schools out there. Have you seen the belt testing that he does? It's on YouTube, and it's like really high level, right?
Yeah,
so being a Japanese jiu-jitsu black belt, I mean, he can do things that we can't do. Like, he knows how to eye gouge, he knows how to groin strike, he knows how to throat punch, right? Like, when he's got those types of experience, I know that in a fight, I'd probably I'd probably give up my back.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where we have to keep in mind, like, hey, we all love jiu-jitsu, but it is Brazilian jiu-jitsu especially. It is the gentle art, right? Like,
and it's a sport art.
Yeah,
you know, it's like it's for sport. Whereas Japanese jiu-jitsu is like that's
it's for
on the street.
It's like it evolved from like samurai combat, right? Like this stuff would not have lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years if it were not legitimate. So you've got to respect all of the other arts because they do fill in kind of some of the holes that you see in jiu-jitsu. You know, we know with jiu-jitsu, there's obviously no striking. We know that's a weakness. We also know that the stand-up game tends to be a weakness for most jiu-jitsu practitioners. You've got to also understand that there is like the self-defense, like legitimate, I want to hurt the guy aspect. And in jiu-jitsu, you can delude.
And the technical aspect.
Yeah.
Like it's Japanese jiu-jitsu is more technical.
Yeah, like you can delude yourself too with jiu-jitsu because you might be like a super effective grappler when you're doing like, jiu-jitsu or even when you're doing MMA, you might think you're a hot shot. But man, like as soon as like eye gouges and groin strikes and biting come into play, like
it comes down to who knows how to do that.
Yeah, like man, when you got like a guy locked in an armbar and he starts like elbowing you in the balls, like that completely changes the situation. Now I know what everyone thinks, like, well, couldn't you just completely rip the guy's arm off of his socket? And it's like, I think you're underestimating the blinding pain of like ball strikes and eye gouging. It's like it's like a death touch basically, right?
Yeah, it's like the dim mak. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you take a guy like Ari Bolden, who's a Japanese jiu-jitsu black belt and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, and you put him against a sport jiu-jitsu grappler like, I don't know, someone like Paulo Mayao, I'm pretty sure with the Japanese jiu-jitsu background, Ari Bolden's going to win that street fight. Yeah. When there's no rules.
It's just a more complete game, right?
I mean, good luck pulling guard and berimboloing me when I can gouge your eyeballs. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. And you want to talk about like sport jiu-jitsu, like one thing I really think is dangerous about sport jiu-jitsu though, and something that I'm actually, the more I think about it, the more I agree that reaping the knee actually is probably for the best. And that's because our knees are the most...
You mean knee reaping bands is for the best?
Knee ripping... No, I think that knee reaps should remain banned. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, knee reaps should remain banned because most of the injuries that anyone's ever seen have been to the knee and because of knee reaping.
Yeah, I mean, there's this myth going around that, like...
You've seen how bad it looks.
Yeah, it always looks terrible. I mean, there is a myth that knee reaping is that, that like heel hooks are actually quite controlled and you're unlikely to get seriously hurt if you have control.
I used to think that, man.
Yeah. But I actually heard someone tell me that like they thought that like jumping guard was more dangerous on the knee than knee reaping. But I mean, you just look at it, right? Like, you're attacking the knee. Well, like, why would this have been banned for, decades and decades, if not for the fact that it is dangerous? Like, you can't question the IBJJF on that stuff. They've got the experience to make this call.
I mean, they like, first of all, like, that most IBJJF is gi. We're talking gi related stuff. I mean, when you put that gi on, like, if you reap that leg, there's no escape.
Yeah, it's like wet cardboard. It's just going to collapse,
do you want my knee to explode right now? It's not needed. It's not part of grappling, and it has it's not even effective anyway. So I don't even know why you'd want to do so.
Yeah, we want, I mean, every submission, like, it's very important that these submissions be civil, right? Like, we want it to be a gentlemanly or gentlewomanly sport. It should be civil. You shouldn't actually have submissions that can like actually hurt the person, right? Like that's not what they're about, right? Like
if you want to do that shit, you go to Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, like if you're actually doing moves that have the potential to hurt somebody, then you're not really doing a legitimate Brazilian jiu-jitsu submission.
Yeah, when it's all about technique, you don't want to actually do anything that hurts. Like, for example, like when I'm doing a rear naked choke on someone, like, I need to only get a blood choke. There's no place in the sport for cranks or air chokes or anything mean like that. Like, it's in my school, I don't even allow those types of chokes.
Yeah. When Helio Gracie invented jiu-jitsu, he was very clear that
he invented grappling.
Yeah, I mean, let's give the man credit, right? he was very clear that blood chokes are the only legitimate forms of chokes. That's how he beat Kimura, right? Is, you know, he had just a much more a solid understanding of the ground game. So you can't question this guy when he says this stuff, you know. I know that some people like air chokes or, you know, even cranks, and like those are like right up there with like knee reaping, in my opinion. And like if you
danger or dirtiness,
well, in both, right? I mean, like if you choke someone's windpipe, like I mean, how do you know like their head isn't going to just come off, right? Like the windpipe is like, that's like almost part of the spine. And like, I mean, I don't want to get too far into biology here, Matt, but you know, like you could like literally like pull someone's head right off if you put that pressure on the windpipe.
Well, you know, it's kind of like what Joe Rogan says. It's like you're cranking, and all of a sudden the head will come off really quick. Yeah. It's like a heel hook. It's like, okay, you've got my leg. I don't feel anything at all, and then all of a sudden my leg literally explodes into small pieces. So
yeah, like it's the kind of
could kill a man, break their neck with a neck crank. So why do it?
That's why this kind of stuff is so frowned upon, right? You got to be careful. Like if it were me, I not to ever claim that I'm in the league of the IBJJF, and I would never put myself on that level. But if I were part of that group, I would suggest that like if you're rolling with someone and you tap them with the choke and then they tell you, hey, that was a blood choke, or hey, that was an air choke, or hey, that was a crank. Like I think you should roll back that win. I think that like even in the gym, right? Like if you get on top of someone and you choke them and they say that was an air choke, I think you should apologize and like you should have to restart.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's no need for a neck crank. Like, don't be dirty. Get better technique, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I know that if you've been following the episodes up to now, you probably are thinking, well, hold on, we were talking about like alignment, right? And talking about exploiting levers. And shouldn't that imply that like any exploitation of lever to break alignment is a good thing? And, you know, up until about a week ago, that's kind of what I thought too. But now, you know, hearing about all of these ridiculously nasty injuries, like, I mean, you know,
so many knee injuries,
so many
neck injuries.
I mean, I couldn't like cite one right now, but I can go Google it afterwards. Like there's all of these like injuries from like air chokes and cranks and knee reaps that are out there. Like, I mean, you can just go and look it up on your own. I'm sure you'll find this stuff. It really goes to show that like there's a reason why this stuff is banned, and you've got to trust the IBJJF on this. They've been doing this a lot longer than you have. They've created these rules for a good reason. They would never ban or discourage things if not for a good reason. Like when you hear people talking about how like, you know, donkey guard should be banned, like I'm sure there is a good safety reason there, and it's not just some weird aesthetic decision.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you should not question IBJJF. They're basically the Olympics of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Basically the Olympics of jiu-jitsu, and they should have the authority. I mean, like
the moral authority, really, right?
Yeah, and that's why I think everyone, like, you know, every year, if you want to compete in their tournaments, you should pay their membership fees. You should
register with them, right?
Yeah, everyone should. I mean, in fact, if you don't, you're not really a real black belt.
Not even close. Yeah. I mean, never in history has there been a situation.
You just get a lot out of their memberships.
Yeah. There's a lot of value you're going to get out of that membership. Like never in history has there been a problem with like forced registration of people. Like this is something that we really need to embrace when it comes to the IBJJF. Like they really, there needs to be a central database of all black belts, because otherwise how can you guarantee that the art isn't going to get like diluted away from, you know, Master Helio's vision?
It's true. And you can't be a competitor without paying them for that membership first.
Yeah.
And I mean, like one thing that I think is really good for the IBJJF is you know, just having all of these standards that really hold us to a higher level for jiu-jitsu, and in the end it's going to make the sport a lot more legitimate and have a lot more integrity as a governing body.
Yeah. And I think that's why, you know, I think all of us, especially those of us who own gyms, should look to that kind of model to understand like how you can set the bar for integrity. And we should all be striving to put those kinds of rules and create that discipline at place, even at a local level. Like if you're a gym owner, first of all, I would say if you're a gym owner and you are not part of a major franchise, like your gym is not even worth discussing, right? I mean, Matt, I'm sure that you can understand this, right? Like, I know that you've been thinking for a long time about like that Gracie Barra affiliation and that kind of thing. That's like the like seal of approval. You know, that's the lineage that ties you back to the Gracies. And without that, you're not really teaching true Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You're just teaching like generic grappling. And how good can that really be?
Yeah, like I think jiu-jitsu should be taught the way that Grandmaster Helio wanted and intended, and that involves, you know, everyone in the gym has the same uniform. Everyone, you know, you sell their clothes for them. You bring in lots of clothes, and you bring them up for seminars so that they can make that money. You know, like that's how you pay back Grandmaster Helio. That's how you pay back the family for inventing grappling.
Yeah, you owe that family, right? Like,
and in return, you know, they're giving you so much, right? That's how this works. Your gym does really good. And, you know, standards go up, everything goes up, and, you know, you end up making a lot of money. And that's what we're looking for as gym owners.
Yeah. Like team uniforms are super important. Like, this is another thing where like, there's never been an example in history where uniforms have led to any sort of like trouble, right? Like, having uniforms is always a positive sign of morale and team building. And, you know, I know a lot of people say, well, you know, it can be expensive to buy these things, but it's like, don't you owe that to your instructor? They're giving you all of this outstanding knowledge. Like, it's not like they're charging you for that. I mean, at some point you have to be paying back to them, right? So why not support them, and buy their merchandise, right?
Yeah. Like, it's nice when you go into a school and everyone's got the exact same uniform, you know, there's no difference and everyone's the same. That's what we need. That's what we're trying to, like, that. I think that's the
strength through uniformity, right? Like,
that's pardon the pun, right?
Yeah.
And definitely, you know, if you don't wear your team's uniform, like, how are you supposed to express yourself?
Yeah,
right? You express yourself by wearing the team's insignia.
Yeah, it's not about expressing yourself through your own individuality or preferences. It's about expressing yourself through your instructor's individuality and preferences, right? That's how you unify a team, is through like loyalty and devotion, right?
That's
and
right.
Sometimes that comes along with transmission of cash, right? Sometimes you've got to pay back into the coffers.
Yeah, and definitely when I'm training in the gym, one of the things that I really like to do is you know, I'm not afraid to show that I'm proud of myself when I do well. So sometimes when I'm rolling with people, I celebrate a lot of wins in the gym.
You got to recognize your victories, right? Like even the little ones.
Yeah, like, you know, and sometimes I'll be rolling with like a girl or you know, maybe a white belt,
or sometimes a kid
in
right?
the kids class, you know, and you know, you get that tap. And sometimes you hold on. You hold on a little longer too. Sometimes because I want, you know, let's say it's one of my kids' class. I want them to know this is how it feels if you don't tap.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's about sending a message.
Only then will you know how far that I can armbar you before there's a little pop. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I know that in tournaments, you know, you like, sometimes people are like hard on, you know, celebration after a win. In tournaments, you know, it can be seen as excessive sometimes, but I do think it's important. Like, you worked hard, you got that win, it feels good. You should validate your performance, and not just at the tournament level, but like even on the mats, right? Like, you know, when you have that hard roll with that guy, you got to do that victory lap, right? You got to, that's like, your professor is going to see that, and he's going to notice that, and he's going to, that's part of how he's going to validate and realize, okay, maybe it's time to promote this guy, right? When he sees like that's the feedback to the instructor that you're on the winning track. He sees you winning all of the time in the gym. You know, when you celebrate, it draws that attention, and if you don't do that, how is your instructor ever going to know that it's time for that promotion?
Yeah, and it's like that old saying where it's, you know, the way that you train in the gym, that's how you're going to compete.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if I'm training for the Worlds, then in the gym, I'm going to pretend that it's the Worlds. In my head, I'm out there at the Worlds. So, you know, if look out, and I don't care if you're a beginner, if you're a kid, I'm probably going to come at you, and then I'm going to let you know. Just the afterwards. That's how happy I am that I just won the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like success visualization. You know how they say, like, if you want to succeed at a really hard goal, you need to visualize that goal. The in-gym celebration is kind of like another piece of that, right? Like, you know, you're kind of visualizing that success. So, you know, when I like, you know, jump up and down and do a cartwheel after I tap someone in gym, that's just me creating the mindset of a champion that's going to pay off later when I actually go to a real fight, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's how you stay humble, right? Like you
got to get it out of your system, and then you're humble the rest of the time.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm in the gym a lot of the time, I think the best place to start is from my knees.
Yeah, this is something, I know there's a lot of controversy around that, but like, again, this kind of comes back to safety, right? Like stand up is we talked about like leg reaping and air chokes and how dangerous they are, but like just standing up is like unbelievably dangerous. The risk of injury is so high when you're standing up. Like you can't be having that if you want to actually build a gym for the long term. You gotta, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Like people are going to fly into each other like ping pong balls, it's best for everyone if you just start from your knees or even better, one person starts from guard. That's the kind of the best scenario because that, again, it ties back to what Master Helio would have wanted, right? Like he wouldn't have wanted you to stand up. Yeah. He would have wanted you to go to the floor. So you're really, not only is this better for safety, but you're tying this back to the vision of jiu-jitsu from 100 years ago.
Yeah, and as we all know, the fight doesn't start until you're in the closed guard. So I mean, just like
everything else doesn't really count, right?
I totally agree with you, Steve, about stand-up being so dangerous. I mean, if you ask me, I think it's kind of brutish and just there's no place for that.
It's uncivilized.
Yeah. All fights go to the ground. We know that. We should just start from our knees because that's where the fight's going to go anyway. So if I just practice by starting my knees, I'm pretty sure that that's going to work, most of the time in competition.
Yeah, if you remember back in UFC 1, they said on commentary when they were pumping up Royce Gracie, they were saying that, the reason why the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so dangerous is because 90% of the fights go to the ground. Now, I've never seen the scientific research behind that, but I'm pretty sure that must have come from like a study that they actually did, because otherwise, why would they have said that?
Yeah.
So it must be true. So why not just skip all of that unpleasantness about like the stand-up part of the fight and just get right to the floor?
Yeah, if you want to do that stand-up stuff, like go do Hapkido, go do UFC, go do one of those like those stand-up arts.
But you're deluding yourself.
This is
though,
BJJ,
right?
like it's about closed guard.
Yeah.
It's on the ground. That's what Master Helio would have wanted. Like, just get the fight to the ground, and no one gets hurt.
And honestly, it's better for you as a fighter too, because like if you look at these guys who do stand up, like wrestlers and MMA fighters, like you put those guys with a guy who does straight jujitsu, and the jujitsu guy is going to tear them apart every time. Because what good is like wrestling if I can just pull guard to you? I mean, I immediately pull you into my game, and you've got nothing left. I've like negated your entire martial art.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you've played closed guard in class before. Like they can't hit you from there. You know what I mean? Like once you go there, you're invincible there.
Yeah,
so it's like that's
like you
where
just
you
pull their
want
head
to be.
down. Like all you have to do is like if they start trying to punch you, you just pull their head down. I never get in the UFC why. I think the problem you see in the UFC is all of these guys are like early blue belt level because they get to the guard and the other guy just like tees off on their face and they just don't know how to defend it. Like all you have to do is pull the guy's head down and then like tighten up your grips and that's it.
Yeah, and I love when MMA guys are like, oh well, the mount is like the worst place to be in. Like, okay, I don't know. Like you could just punch the guy in the dick from the bottom. Like his dick's right there. You
just reach behind and just like drop a hammer fist on the dick. Like
exactly. Like I don't. We
already talked about groin strikes. It's like that's the end of it if you get punched in the balls.
Oh, it's the end. That actually is the most effective martial art.
Yeah. I mean, I saw UFC 4, right? Like I know how effective this stuff is. You don't want to mess around with that. It's all of this other stuff. Like
unless you're a thug.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds appealing. Like, jiu-jitsu sounds appealing in theory. Like, you have control and you have alignment. But I mean, the reality, and something we haven't mentioned earlier is like all of the stuff about alignment and breaking posture, that stuff only works if you're not getting like bitten or punched in the balls or gouged in the eyes. Like those kinds of things take it to another level that we're not ready for. Right.
That's right.
So that kind of stuff, that's where the mental model breaks down is as soon as someone like starts trying to like, poke you in the eye. Well, that's like an immediate posture structure and base break because the pain is so severe.
Yeah. And,
right?
And posture structure base is only for jiu-jitsu usually. So it's like once they, it goes out the window. It's just like when you get hit in the face, all of a sudden you're a purple belt, then you're a blue belt, then you're a white belt.
Yeah. Pressure points too also have it's like, man, that stuff like bypasses posture structure base and just like attacks the nervous system directly.
Yeah. It's just like if you were to get tasered. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's why those pressure point attacks are so dangerous.
Yeah. And that's why you never see them in high level grappling is because you can't introduce something like that without like serious risk of injury to the other person.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just not gentlemanly.
Of course.
We've already talked about things like reaping, and, it's not gentlemanly to reap. And why would you want to win like that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's only a quality win if it's a win the way that Master Helio would have wanted.
That's right.
Like, why are we doing this if not to honor the lineage of the Gracie family?
I'll tell you one thing, I'm not questioning anything that the IBJJF does or Grandmaster Helio.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing to kind of tie this back to the beginning, we talked about mat celebration and how, it's important to have to celebrate your wins on the mat. And the counter side to that too is like you as a more senior person should never allow yourself to lose to a more junior person. Like, I mean, if you were to ask me, that's cause for having your belt revoked, right? If you get tapped by a junior person.
Oh yeah. Like I think that's grounds for demotion.
Yeah.
Like I'm always watching too, right? And if you do get subbed by a lower belt, that just shows that you don't deserve the belt that you have.
Yeah. And I mean, and make no mistake, like every time you get tapped, especially by a lower belt, your instructor is watching and they're making a note of that. And that is going to affect your future performance. So it's super critical that when you are in that submission, like, when like the guy one level below you gets you in that armbar, you just got to go all or nothing. Like your only legitimate defense at that point is beast mode because you cannot afford to get tapped by a junior belt. The stakes are just too high in the gym.
Yeah. And like, if you're in an armbar and they're hanging upside down, like spike them, like do what you got to do to get out of there because like your instructor is watching. How do you think your instructor got his black belt?
Yeah,
do you think he tapped to a lower rank?
Never.
No,
of course
that's
not.
how he got to black belt.
Like that's why black belts in jiu-jitsu are so rare, right? It's because like you got to get all the way up there without ever getting tapped, even in gym, by a more junior guy. Like that's a hard ordeal. Like it's hard to go undefeated for that long, and that's why getting everyone says that getting a black belt in jiu-jitsu is hard because it takes 8 to 12 years. But no, it's hard because you got to train 8 to 12 years without losing one time.
I've never tapped to a lower belt.
Me neither. No, like I would rather let them break the bone than tap to a lower belt because my instructor is going to find out, right? Like, and if my instructor finds out, I might come in one day and now I'm a brown belt again. And man, like I don't want to climb that mountain.
Do you think Helio ever tapped to a lower belt?
No. Look at Helio's most famous moment was getting his ass kicked to the point that he actually blacked out, but he refused to tap, and that's why he won.
That's how he beat Kimura.
That's how he beat Kimura, is just he took a beating without tapping. And what is more noble and what is a more pure victory than just refusing to give up when you've been just completely demolished? Like, isn't that what jiu-jitsu is all about at the end of the day?
That and
steroids.
Yes. Steroids. Also, another thing, steroids don't work.
Yeah, it's a myth. I know that we talk about how, steroids are terrible and you shouldn't be doing that. But at the end of the day, like, I think a lot of that might be a bit of a myth. I mean, there really is no
placebo effect.
Yeah,
right?
there really is no evidence in jiu-jitsu that steroids have ever had a beneficial effect to anyone. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, of course there's no evidence of that because no one's actually ever done a study on that. But like, let's be real. If steroids were a legitimate performance booster, you would be seeing people in all sorts of sports getting caught and busted for steroids because it helps the performance. But clearly that's not the case. So clearly it's not actually helping in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, some people say that there is steroids. There's been talks of steroids being in jiu-jitsu, but that's just impossible because the IBJJF would test for that. I mean, they're
like, we got to trust these guys. They're on top of it.
They test everyone. They're drug testing everyone. So if no one's getting popped for steroids, then IBJJF would not lie about that, right? So I don't even think people are really doing a lot of steroids anyways. And I think the word's getting out that it doesn't really work.
Yeah, like, I mean, the IBJJF, I'm sure, and again, I haven't looked, but I'm sure that if you Google it, you'll probably find a lot of documentation about their comprehensive drug testing program. So this is something that I think we just don't have to worry about, and we can just end the conversation here. Like, it's clearly a non-issue in the sport.
Yeah, it's a non-issue.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that was a good chat. I hope that this provides a bit of guidance to all of you. Consider this kind of like a correction episode where we talk about some of the things we've learned since episode 1. Please do take this and make mental notes of this stuff and kind of adapt that to what we've already discussed. As we talked about earlier, you might, if any of this stuff, you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, this sounds a bit odd. I'm not sure I agree with that. As we mentioned earlier, like, look, guys, if we tell you that this is the way it is, you got to trust us on this. It's the way it is. We've been doing this for a long time. There's no reason why we would be giving you misinformation, especially to like now of all times. Like there's no reason. So you got to take our words for it that this is good stuff. This is the truth. Just run with it, right? Like just try it. Don't question it. Just try it. Thank us later.
Yeah. And guys, you know, if you have any questions or ideas, like, you know, just, we're not really into questions right now. We're kind of working on some stuff right now, but just know that Steve and I are black belts, so that like we know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't need to worry about it. Like we said, we've never tapped to lower ranks. This is how we got our black belts. And we're at a different level once we get our black belts. So
yeah,
there's no need to question.
I mean, I know that in the past we've talked about how important it is to submit questions, but like, look, I'm just going to be honest with you. As a black belt, I have already thought of and answered pretty much any question that you could ever come up with. Just be patient, and I'm sure at some point we will answer what you were going to ask. I don't want to cause you the humiliation of having us have to like read your question and have the whole world think that you don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, if we're not bringing it up, it's not something that you need to worry about. You know, it's not a bit of information that you need to know. So just listen to us. If it's important, we'll tell you about it. That's the end of it.
I hope you guys enjoyed this chat.
Yep. Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.